from the start of production until it is handed over to a patient, you want to know from our perspective what the temperature flow is of that product so that you can safely say this product is safe to be used.
Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. I am Joachim from Green Innovation Group. We are hosting the podcast. We are a management consulting company working only with sustainability in healthcare, pharma and medtech. And today we are talking about something which I find really exciting. I'm joined by Jeroen from Elpro, and he is working with cold chain monitoring. So how do you keep the medicine at the right temperature levels throughout the supply chain? We talk a lot about that, but we also go into some of the circular programs that they have at Elpro, trying to get their data loggers back again and how that industry collaboration is going. So lots of cold chain, lots of circular economy, and lots of sustainability ahead. Hope you'll enjoy it. Jeroen, welcome so much to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. It's good to have you here.
Hi.
I've been really looking forward to this conversation because we're going to go pretty broad, I expect, talking about the pharmaceutical supply chains, quality assurance, monitoring, and of course all that in a context of sustainability. But first, I'm curious, what drove you into this sector in the beginning, and what excites you about it?
Well, yeah, I am a global business management at Elpro, and I'm focused on temperature monitoring, and obviously, in regards to sustainability and environment, these are huge topics that we are working upon to make our impact as small as possible. And for that, we try to come up with solutions in order to reduce our presence more or less or on the world.
Yeah, good job. And I think it's important to mention here as well that you are here as a private person, of course, working with Elpro, but not strictly on behalf of Elpro. Could you briefly introduce Elpro to those of our listeners who don't know it?
Elpro produces monitoring solutions for the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare. And there you have to divide it into parts. Small data loggers for the monitoring of products in transit, and sophisticated systems to monitor warehouses, production areas, etc. I'm talking today mostly out of my experience for within the cold chain for products in transit, because there I think that there is a big change going on within that industry, as where we are aware that the products that we sell from a environmental perspective are not the best ones, but obviously on the other hand it's contradicting. You need them to guarantee the quality of the products that they are monitoring. And yeah, out of that perspective, I can explain what it is we do and what in the way the direction that we think we are headed.
Yeah, and that's I'm really glad you're bringing this up. And so the cold chain is the part of the supply chain where everything is cooled. Could also be in food and beverages, but of course it's huge in pharma, as a lot of medicine needs to be cooled. And We also know from the drawdown report and IPCC and many other things that cooling is one of the key battles that need to be won for us not to reduce so much CO2. So could you talk us through, just on a very practical level, you mentioned that you're especially working with medicine in transit. What's the supply chain life of a medicine, and how does Elpro follow that?
Well, you start off obviously with API, so that is the basic ingredients for a medication, and then that API goes into production, and there it is being processed into a final product. So let's say, for argument's sake, that the end product is a vaccine. But from the start of production until it is handed over to a patient, you want to know, from our perspective, what the temperature flow is of that product, so that you can safely say this product is safe to be used. And in order to do so, they are placing small data loggers like these ones.
Oh, awesome. You brought one. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one, and you will have different ones. So this, for example, is a USB data logger. You plug it into the computer, and then you get a full report, or you take a little bigger one, and that is a real-time data logger, as where the information using IoT connectivity is transferred to a cloud-based software solution, as where you can see the location of your goods and the condition of the goods that you are transporting. And that is the added value of our products, because then you can safely say, when the data logger says it was okay, that the product is temperature-wise to be injected, coming back to that vaccine, into a person's body, and that it is fully functional from a temperature perspective. And by using data loggers, we reduce waste, because you know for sure that from a temperature perspective, the medication has been handled correctly.
Yeah, and it goes back to the cardinal rules in healthcare, that it has to be safe and efficient for the patient, and here that temperature is a key variable, of course, in both that it functions as it should, and also that it's not harmful.
And with the data loggers, we take great care to deliver top quality, and therefore we use type A components, and only top quality components. And then those data loggers are shipped all over the world. And yeah, basically at the end, they are finished in the sense of their functionality at that moment. But the components within those data loggers either have to be recycled in a responsible way, or nowadays we are going like, oh, wait a moment, can't we reuse it? And for that reason, to reduce the impact that we have looked at our components and have come to the conclusion that the components that we are using have a economically life cycle of 10 to 20 years. And then we are, let's say, flying them from Denmark to the US, that is there, and then we would discard them. And that's a little bit not the way forward. And for that reason, we are trying to promote to our customers, and many customers are aware of it already, that we say, okay, gather those products in a box and give me a call when the box is full, and then I will pick it up. So that's what we have been doing already for some years. And then we retrieved our data loggers, and then we recycled them in a environmentally less good way. But now we think, yeah, okay, now they're recycled, but we can reuse it again and again, because we know how many times those components are used, because everything, that is the beauty of the pharmaceutical industry, everything is recorded. So we know exactly when it was used, and but if it would be used multiple times, we can reuse certain components within new to deliver Libros, and then we create a circular life for our data loggers. And that is where we want to head to. And it's an initiative within Elpro and with customers of us of the last 6 months. So if you're going to ask me data, how many are recycled, etc., I cannot tell you yet. But in all the discussions that I'm having with customers as of today, and the carbon footprint is an important topic, and everybody wants to help us getting our Libros returned to Elpro.
So your measurement electronics, it's still not the normal way. The majority is still being discarded the old way, but there's been a lot of what could you say, positive energy, and some of your clients have adopted the new. And it's super interesting. You're highlighting a lot of the issues that we see in circular economy. One, of course, being that now you need to work together. So in that sense, it's more complicated, because as I understood you, they purchase the electronic device. So essentially, you lose control over it. So you cannot force it back. So it would end up somewhere, and that means that in order to actually get it back, you need to have a very good collaboration, or perhaps shift to a leasing model or something. But that's a larger discussion.
Oh, that is the near future, because I told you we also have the real-time data loggers. And with real-time, I think that the industry is going in a different direction, because there it might be even the case that the customers don't purchase the device anymore, but they pay per use. And so they send it to their customer, and it is us who is. But that is obviously in the ideal world. But the challenge is, of course, how to get them back. Because if you send one device to a clinic in Africa, the calculation and also again the carbon footprint of sending one device back might be not very efficient. Sorry.
Yeah, no, definitely, and especially if you send it back by plane. I remember earlier in my career, 10 years ago, I worked for a tool company, like power tools and stuff, and help them introduce a leasing model, and for some of these reasons as well, and it was quite a difficult dialogue to take with customers as well, just because even though it was fair price, the economics were a bit different. You tied into department in different way, and there was a lot of mindset change that needed to happen as well. But leasing aligns incentives beautifully in a circular economy most of the time, I think, because you become responsible essentially.
Especially when now we know where the product is at.
Yeah.
So I can see if I have permission, of course, where those data loggers are sent to. And then I can track them in terms of location and say, okay, now I have an X amount in that area. So now I should pick them up or collect them and have them returned. And that's the way I think, or I push that way forward, because I think it's always dangerous to say, yeah, we are green. Per definition, if you produce something, you're not green. But we want to reduce that impact as much as possible. I think that's the more safe way of stating it. And therefore, we try to come up with new business models as where you implement a circular economy for your products to minimize that impact. And that will be the way forward. And that now I'm only talking about the data loggers, but obviously if you send a cold chain product, it is packed in a certain fashion. And a lot of those packaging materials are also being reused. So that's again another discussion is, hey, I have to team up with more parties. So it's not only the customer who's using it, it's also the packaging companies, the forwarder. And if we team up as industry, then we will get the best results.
Yeah, I think that's one of the conundrums, that there's the hen and the egg problem for many things around sustainability in the healthcare industry, that most things would be better if we all collaborated and there were uniform standards and so on. And of course, the industry is very used to that coming from a regulatory point of view, but it's not that used to collaborating because it's also very IP sensitive. And
it is changing fast.
It is, luckily it is, yeah.
So we are getting there, and it is amazing talking to customers, how the energy that's there to make those changes happening, because nobody wants to pollute or be bad to our environment in such, whether it is in terms of pollution or people or whatever. So that cooperation is getting there, and the initiatives are there, and they simply have to grow. So, and especially with real time, that we can really track the devices, that gives us a huge benefit.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So where do you think we will be in 5 years? If you,
I think within 5 years, 90% of our data loggers will be in that circular economy and will be used multiple times and over a set of years. And that is the way forward, and that's how it's going to be.
Oh, that's super exciting. And if there's any one of our customers sitting out there in quality assurance or supply chain that want to engage more in this new circular way, can they reach out to you? Or?
Yes, of course. They can all reach out to me, and I can explain them what we have set up so far. And if they have bright ideas, let me know. And because I'm always open to learn new things and to make it better. And that's the cooperation that in general we have with our customers.
Yeah, no, always good to hear. I know sometimes we manage to be the connecting link in the podcast between people, and that's always a joy to me. You mentioned vaccines earlier as an example, which I think is very interesting in regards to cold chain, and we have also just had COVID. I know for some parts of the world it was an issue because of lack of cold chains to actually get vaccines out to people. On a global level, how well covered are we in cold chain, or is there some places where the cold chain stop and we can say, okay, these areas we have a hard time?
Obviously, there will be issues, but if in general I look, for example, at the COVID,
Mm,
I think in the end we had it pretty decent under control,
mm,
looking at how fast it had to be distributed in the end.
yeah.
But obviously the temperature ranges of the COVID vaccines at the time was
Mm,
low. So
yeah.
we talked about minus 70 degrees,
Mm,
which makes it more difficult to transport. But
mm,
now over time, those temperatures go down, and this you have to give the pharmaceutical industry
mm,
obviously some time in order to develop a product. And in
mm,
the beginning of any new product, the storage conditions for
mm,
those products are at a low temperature, because then products tend to be more stable.
mm,
But since you learn more about products over time,
yeah.
okay, but they also react well at higher temperatures. So future COVID vaccines will be stored at more or different temperature ranges, but I'm not a scientist, so I don't know
No, no.
the exact ranges of it. But you will see that it will be. I don't think it will be an over-the-counter drug anytime soon, but
Probably not.
it will improve, and therefore distribution of those vaccines will be easier.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's of course because we know at the lower temperature, the more slow or stable the biological process. This is why we can sometimes find old DNA in the Arctic that is still there, and so on. And then of course you have the challenge that some of the places where the cold chain is least established, like in Africa, is also very warm places, which creates some tension. So, what are the normal or the temperature ranges for? Could you talk us through what are some normal temperature ranges for pharmaceutical products? It differs, of course.
The most common temperature ranges are 2 to 8, 15 to 25.
Mm,
But the new biological medication, because of their time to market,
mm,
is shorter. We see a tremendous increase of temperature
mm,
ranges below 40,
mm,
or the dry ice, so the minus 79, or
mm,
even cryo
mm.
minus 196 degrees.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
going towards cold uh, transportation
Mm.
is the winning trend. But when a medication becomes more or older, temperatures, the storage temperatures go up.
Yeah, because you have more experience and more data to guarantee that the compound is still, yeah.
Yeah, if you launch a new drug, can imagine that you don't want people to get ill from it. You want patient safety. That is a key element within our business.
Yeah, no, no, exactly, and it's super exciting, and I didn't know the cryo was stored so low, but it makes sense. Could you just for those of our listeners who are not super familiar in the cold chain, could you talk us through the practicalities? So when the API product leaves the factory, how is it cooled? during the cold chain?
It depends totally on what kind of product it is. An API for a vaccine. Yeah, it totally depends on what the end or what the product is, and thereupon temperature ranges for transport or storage are being defined. And nowadays you see that there's a shorter time to market. So in the old days it was, if I may call it like that, but the time to market was a couple of years, and within that couple of years you can retrieve more stability data, so temperature stability data on medication. But if you shorten that to a couple months, then obviously you don't have that data, and out of safety you make sure that it is being stored at a low temperature, so you know definitely that there will not be any changes to the product, so it will be still working fully.
Yeah. No, and is it and on the practical that makes a lot of sense. And on the practical level, is it are we talking air conditioning units in containers, or are we talking dry ice, or how is it done on a very practical level?
You have PCM, so phase changing materials, gel, cooling blocks. You have active containers, passive containers, you name it. They are very inventive in the way they are keeping that temperature at a certain level. And also that is all being tested by institutes in real practice. They are testing it, testing those packaging materials, but they also put it in a lab. And nowadays they also have computer simulation programs, as where they say, okay, this is the volume of product that we need to cool. They design a pack out around it, and then they know how it will behave. And you have Smart CEE who is doing all kinds of calculations in that respect. Or in the Netherlands, you have the TOPA Institute who is testing all those pack outs for their clients. And then you qualify those pack outs, and then you know, okay, in these conditions, the temperature stays within that range for an X period of time. But that's a whole different science.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, we are touching on a lot of aspects that neither you nor I are experts in, and I've found that to always be the case in pharma and in healthcare, that you are never the person in the room who knows the most about all the topics, which is quite joyful because you learn so much.
Definitely so, and therefore the cooperation and working together, the partnerships that we create with customers. Yeah, we're all in the same boat, and what we have in mind is patients' safety. But obviously, we also want to have sustainable products, and we want to reduce the impact that we have on the world.
Yeah, for sure, and it's highly necessary looking at the cold chain, because we can see whether you're looking at a hospital or pharmaceutical company, and the majority of their CO2 emissions will come from scope 3. Meaning the supply chain outside of the company, predominantly before them upstream. So it's absolutely necessary. Another interesting aspect I would like to hear your opinion about is that what amount of waste do you see? I mean, you probably only see it from a temperature perspective. But could you talk us through that?
What I do, the waste that we are generating, 90% of the if the products are returned, 90% of the waste is being recycled, and then the other 10%, or it's all being recycled, but 90%, let me correct that, 90% we can reuse, and for that reason it's important that we get those products back.
Oh, yeah, okay, for sure, on your own data loggers and so on. But I was also curious, that makes a lot of sense. I was also curious about the, I mean, sometimes something happens in a supply chain and you might break the temperature range. Thereby the medicine can't live up to quality assurance standards anymore. How much does that happen in general terms?
I cannot say that. I don't have those figures. Now,
all good.
Obviously it does happen. But if you want to put a price tag or a volume on it, I don't have that information.
No.
We help customers how to evaluate temperature excursions. We advise them how to set the data loggers, so they have certain thresholds within the data logger. So a lot of customers use a upper and lower temperature limit. We advise to use multiple temperatures, so the stability data of the product, for the simple fact that reduces the amount of alarms, and therefore it reduces the amount of waste, so to say, of product in the end.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. From what I've seen, a lot of the waste in medicine waste is downstream from going beyond expiration dates or being lost inside the healthcare systems or out the patient if it's something that they're taking at home.
Yeah, well, if you get 10 pills to take with you to your home, and you stop after the first, then you waste 9 units. So that is, I think that is the biggest waste within the pharmaceutical, but also that is totally not my field of expertise. But therefore, I like it. What they're doing as well is that they produce prescriptions on your person. So they calculate, let's say, your body weight, and they say, okay, this person needs this and this amount. Because if you have a headache and I have a headache, we take the same aspirin, but maybe 400 is good enough for you, and my body needs 300. So I think, but that again, that is not my expertise.
No. But there's some interesting
those are initiatives within
there.
the industry to reduce that kind of waste.
So wrapping up here, super exciting that you are actually, we can say, both you and Elpro, right in the middle of a circular transition from having the data loggers end with the customer and that local waste system to hopefully taking them back. And maybe even getting there in 5 years to be more or less fully circular, which would be super exciting. And to get there, what would, if you had to name one key challenge, what would be the most important to really get there in the full circular transition?
A standardized way of getting the product back, and that being efficient will be the challenge in the near future. So how efficient I get my product back so that I can reuse it again and again.
Yeah.
And that is the challenge at the moment.
Yeah. No, that.
And in all of that, still maintain the quality that you have today.
Yeah, that's the key thing always in, I mean, whenever we are working with sustainability in pharma, that of course you're regulated, and there's also there's certain you can never compromise on the quality really, because then you in the end you risk patient lives.
Then you're out.
Yeah.
If I would sell you a data logger that might work, that's not good
Of
enough.
course not.
So yeah, that is always the challenge.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, the positive things is that if we're smart about it, a lot of the times we can achieve the same quality in a more sustainable way.
Yeah, well, we have done research, and on paper it all fits, and now we're bringing it into the real world. And obviously, I still have to prove it, but I hope to sit in this podcast again in a year and tell you what the accomplishments are that we have achieved. And yeah, then you can say, okay, it's the right way forward or not.
Let's make that agreement, Jeroen. I would love to have you back here and hear on the practical achievements of the project and how it went and so on. Thank you so much for coming. It was an absolute joy having you. It's a topic that excites me a lot with cold chains. And yeah, thanks for sharing your expertise.
Thank you very much, Joachim. Thank you.
Hello, Joachim back here again on the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I really, really enjoyed talking to Jeroen, and I think it's some cool stuff that they're doing over there. If you're sitting out there working in quality assurance or supply chain, or you know someone who does in pharma, do reach out to him. It's always a pleasure when we connect someone on the podcast. His LinkedIn profile is in the show notes. And finally, if you're not following the podcast already, please do. That would mean a lot to me. It means that you will receive the freshest episodes when they come out, and it becomes a lot easier for me to get cool people on the podcast. Thank you so much.